Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down episode 7 of Coming back from Invincible and the Coalition winning their first battle in the Viltrumite War, episode 7 picks up right where we left off. We see as Mark and the rest of the heroes head to planet Viltrum in one of the most action-packed episodes yet. It's something we've been waiting to see on screen since that very first season, and it leaves us with some devastating consequences. As always, the episode makes some major deviations from the comics, but it's still packed with plenty of Easter eggs and references to the books. Throughout this video, we'll be recapping the entry and also breaking down all the changes from the comics. As always, though, if you want to catch up on the source material, then you'll want to check out issues 75 and 76. That should give you a great starting point to continue reading from this moment, and yeah, get you ready for the finale and beyond.
You're not my family anymore.
Now, before we get into the Coalition's final boss fight against the Viltrumites, we start off with this super secret origins of Grand Regent Thragg. If you happen to watch our most recent character breakdown of Thragg, then you'll know this is all new for the show. Both Thragg and Nolan briefly described Thragg's rise to power in issues 66 and 102, but we never actually saw how it all went down, and this just fleshes that all out. Basically, it explains why everyone's so terrified of the space tyrant Freddie Mercury. We begin on an unknown planet under Viltrumite rule where people try and fail to start a rebellion. We are then finally introduced to the legendary Lord Ogle himself, with Thragg right at his side as he meets with his generals. This is a nice parallel to how Thragg will later keep his skull close by his side and still serve him even in death. Among the Viltrumites general, we can also see a few familiar faces, such as General Krieg, and oh shit, is that Thetis? Yes, the great betrayer himself in all his former Viltrumite glory. However, we can see that even back then, Thetis was already breaking free from the Viltrumite Kool-Aid. He pushes back when Krieg suggests they decimate the planet for daring to challenge the Empire. He says that to them, they are cruel oppressors and should show restraint in order to avoid this image. He sees the rebellion of these people as an act of strength, which the Viltrumites are supposed to value above everything else. Something I really love about this little standoff between them is that not only do we see how Thetis is already planning his rebellion, but also his perspective on the Viltrumites. Valuing strength above all else, Thetis doesn't necessarily disagree with exerting their power over those weaker, but they should also value that in those as well. Like, they can still rule weaker planets, but in a cool way. However, Ogle doesn't give a shit about their opinions and asks his right-hand man Thragg. He agrees that while they value strength, these people are just so weak that it's almost like an insult to them. Ogle agrees and he orders them to then kill 25% of the population. Which, yeah, well done not killing all of them, but still pretty fucking bad. Fun little voice Easter egg here as well. Lord Ogle is voiced by Franklin Welker, who was Fred in the original Scooby-Doo series. Also interesting to note as well that Thetis' vision for the Viltrumites sounds a lot like the bullshit story Nolan told Mark about the Viltrumites during season 1, where they go and help planets thrive, hit the thumbs up, and share their technology and all that shit along with it. We then see Ogle meeting with Thragg, where they talk about Thetis' very strange behaviour. Thragg says that he and Thetis fought side by side on Capita Minor. That was one of their previous conquests, and in that he became the strongest and most brutal Viltrumite. However, after spending years in the Lake Quadrant, he's gone bloody lame and is all bloody politically correct. You can't kill 25% of people just because of a rebellion. What are you talking about, Thetis? Of course you can. But I would assume that this is where Thetis met up with people who helped him to create the Scourge virus, but that's just my own little theory. Thragg then says that ever since Thetis' return, he's talked of crazy things like mercy and questioning the Viltrumite ways. You mean we shouldn't commit mass murder around the galaxy and should help people instead? He's mad! As they walk down the corridor, we also have what appear to be Praetorian guards. These were present in the Roman Empire and would guard the Emperor himself. They also appeared in Star Wars as well, and were what the Emperor uses as loyalist soldiers and bodyguards. Meanwhile, Ogle just kind of takes us all in and simply tells Thragg that if he thinks Thetis' new outlook threatens the Empire, then he should go and do something about it. But Thragg backs down and says maybe he's wrong, basically hoping Thetis will just snap out of it and that he's just having a moment after going to the Lake Quadrant. We quickly see though this is a very bad judgment call by Thragg as we watch Thetis assassinate Lord Ogle. This is him earning his title of the Great Betrayer. However, I will say they do hide his face a bit and we don't actually see him plunge the knife into Ogle's skull like we do in the comics. Now we then cut to Lord Ogle's funeral where Thragg stands before the Viltrumites and gives them a eulogy about how great he was and how he taught them strength. The strength to claim everything in the universe. This is then met with the chant "all is ours," which is not in the comics, but it adds so much to what they believe and why they've become the worst conquerors in the galaxy. This chant changes everything and really explains who they are and why their greed ties into their need to possess all, which perfectly explains why they also turn on each other. Thragg declares that Lord Ogle's assassination is proof of a sickness poisoning the Viltrumite society. He establishes himself as the new big bad in town by decapitating one of the soldiers standing behind him, and his head rolls down into the crowd. Like, what a fucking way to start your campaign. Thragg then declares himself as the new Grand Regent and gives his first command for all Viltrumites to seek out the weakness that caused Ogle's death and purge it from their society. And yeah, mate, it also seems a bit sus when you go for the black guy first. The cape is put on though, and this move then fires up everyone, and Thragg gives his order and they just start immediately brutally murdering each other. I think we also see a young Nolan standing amongst them, and what I believe is marks granted for a split second. That might not be the case though, as in the comics, Nolan was only a baby / young lad when the purge began. This made me think that the other Mark lookalike is probably Nolan's dad, who would have definitely been alive during the purge. We then get a massive montage of the Viltrumites just ripping each other apart in the most brutal ways possible. People just doing an Anakin Skywalker and even saying "fuck them kids." It's sheer destruction, but also quite beautiful, and we get Adele Anthony's Violin Concerto No. 1. Now, we have heard about the Purge a couple of times in the show, and if you've read the comics, then you've seen a few brief panels on this, but my god, seeing it all actually play out was even more shocking than I imagined. The classical music really makes the whole thing feel devastating, rather than like a hell yeah action scene. Now, they don't explain this in the show, and maybe the timelines are a bit different, but in the comics, Thragg says that this went on for hundreds and hundreds of years. Yes, hundreds of years of this shit. Not an excuse, but you can imagine how the kids who came through this time, like Nolan, they would grow up with a pretty fucked up view on life. It doesn't necessarily make you empathize with them, but it just gives a better understanding of how deep this goes in Viltrumite society. It's also insane to me how they instantly just started doing this under the orders of a higher power. None of them question why they're killing their friends and family, and they just did it because that's what they're told to do. It really speaks to the real weakness amongst the Viltrumites, which is their lack of agency. In many ways, they're just slaves carrying out orders, and any other input or rebellion or even questioning is immediately shut down. Do not question the hive mind. It's groupthink that destroys them in the end, and eventually the Viltrumites are left weakened because of it. They're definitely not stronger. The blood also rains down on Ogle's coffin, and it speaks to how his legacies destroyed the planet. We then see as Thragg takes his throne for the first time, and he locks himself away as the Viltrumites continue killing each other outside. Small detail as well here, but I love how we see Thragg hang his head as he takes the throne, almost reluctantly. This plays off the classic trope, heavy is the head that wears the crown, but it also represents the guilt over Ogle's death. What's just happened also makes sense, I think, when we think about the introduction. We just saw that Thragg already knew Thetis was a problem, and that Ogle gave him the opportunity to stop him, but he chose to show Thetis mercy. If Thragg had have just stuck to being a murderer, none of this would be happening, and his sweet Ogle would still be alive. Feeling like he's responsible for what Thetis has done, he's now making up for it by making sure no one ever makes the same mistake again. Again, Thragg and Thetis having a history together is something that we don't get in the comics, but I think it adds so much to Thragg as a villain. A psychopathic tyrant? Yes, but learning how Thragg had the opportunity to stop Thetis and chose not to really just hammers home why Thragg's so committed to bringing the Viltrumites back to their former glory. Thragg basically blames himself for the Viltrumites' extinction, with his decision not to kill Thetis being the cause of not only Ogle's death, but also the billions that they lost in the Scourge virus. Such a great addition for the show that gives Thragg so much more depth as a character and makes his actions later in the episode even more impactful. Another slight change from the comics here is that Thragg doesn't lock himself away during the purge, and he fights alongside the other Viltrumites until he proves himself the strongest one and takes charge of the others who remain. Which would have been cool, seeing Thragg join in on the massacre, but I'll excuse it for being traded with some character development instead. Now though Invincible Season 4 is almost over, the adventures with Mark don't need to stop. Invincible Guarding the Globe is the incredible squad-based RPG that lets you play in the Invincible universe with a brand new storyline. Invincible Guarding the Globe is the official game of the show, and Ubisoft have crafted an outstanding experience that's perfect for fans of the comics and series. It brings all the thrills of the Amazon Prime TV series with graphic multi-battle action, character collection, squad management, idle features, and of course super super-powered visuals. Now, something mysterious has unleashed a deadly clone army, and alongside Cecil and the GDA, you're going to get to the bottom of it. There's of course lots of big characters from the show to play as, and if you click my link in the description or use my QR code, you'll get Omni-Man and Conquest. New characters are unlocked as they appear in the series too, and there's Dinosaurus, Space Racer, and a lot more. Because of this, you get some great clashes and unique fights that you've never seen before. It's gory, over the top, and filled with graphic multi-battle action that I know you're gonna love. Assemble your line of heroes and deploy them into blood-soaked fights. Each squad member has a role, and you have attackers, defenders, or support, and it's up to you to choose the best combination for every encounter. Run idle battles in the background and send your team on GDA Ops, which are secondary battles that run separate from the main storyline and are played simultaneously. The game is just perfect on the go, and you can pick up and play it whenever you want on your mobile. The visuals are incredible too, and it looks so good. Again, viewers of this channel get extra bonuses, and if you use my link in the description or scan the QR code, you'll get Conquest and Omni-Man. Just click my link in the description or use the QR code and you'll get access to these characters. Huge thank you again to Ubisoft's support on this video. Now let's get into the rest of the breakdown. We then see Thragg emerge from his chambers flying above all. It shows how he views himself as above them and that he doesn't need to lower to their level of fighting amongst themselves. Here he sees what's left of the Empire, and we get some of the usual Viltrumites that we've seen throughout the series, such as Thula, Krieg, and Conquest, who absolutely love the Purge and doesn't want it to end. His arm is also still there, as it hasn't been ripped off by Ragnar. We also get a repeat of the shot that we've seen several times with Krieg standing in front of a pile of bodies. They almost want to continue the bloodshed, but they stand down when Thragg challenges Conquest. Thragg declares that the Purge is now over and that the blood has cleansed them to continue Argyll's mission of conquering the universe. The remaining Viltrumites answer once again, chanting "All is ours" in unison, and it's kind of like the end of a Purge movie made, the calm after the storm. Coming back from our trip down memory lane, we then see Thetis briefing Invincible and the other Coalition heroes on his plan to ambush Thragg on the planet Viltrum. He says that once they kill him, the other Viltrumites will dissolve and just fight amongst themselves, which we can see kind of upsets Mark. Nolan even has to put his hand on his shoulder to stop him from speaking up. I feel like given everything that Mark's gone through and his whole trying to stop murdering people thing, he knows that killing Thragg won't solve all their problems. Every time Mark has tried to solve things with violence, it's only led to something much worse. Like defeating Conquest, only to find out there's an even stronger and more psychotic Viltrumite giving him orders. However, Mark holds his tongue and Thetis continues his hero speech. He says that while Thragg could easily defeat any one of them, together they can end the war forever and prove to the galaxy that the Viltrumites are not. We also get a sweet action shot of the heroes all together, which is ripped straight out of issue 75. For the show, we have the addition of Talia, who's captain of the Venture. The scene plays out pretty much the same way in the comics, but Thetis' speech is a bit longer and way more inspirational here in the show. Thetis' plan is also more of just a general assault on Viltrum in the comics, and not a specific assassination mission for Thragg. With their plans in place, we then see Mark making a tape for Eve in case he doesn't make it back, and he mentions how Thragg was born to be the strongest Viltrumite ever, but it's all good and will probably be fine. Meanwhile, the rest of the team bonds as Alan tries to get them to try some of his Kanzlok snacks, which are those little weird screaming bug things that Alan loves but everyone else hates. Except for Tech Jacket, who actually likes them despite them having a face and screaming for their life. Also, I love how Alan tries to compare it to how people eat cows, but he calls them moo cows. It's dumb, but it made me laugh. We also get some more sparks flying between Oliver and Tech Jacket as they talk about craving Bergamot back on Earth. Battle Beast also chimes in as well with his perfect idea for a meal. He says that will be his own blood as he chokes down on it after a legendary battle with a stronger opponent. Sounds great. If you want to learn more about what happens to him though, then we have a video breaking down his full history and future. Also, I want to point out how Oliver mentions Paul's spaghetti and homemade meatballs as one of his favourites. I'm sorry, what? Paul makes spaghetti now. What is in the spaghetti, Paul? I'm fucking onto you, dude. I'm fucking onto you. We then see Thetis meeting with Nolan as they discuss the gravity of what they're about to do. Nolan even has sympathy for the other Viltrumites and how they'll be left scattered after Thragg falls. Kinda builds off him making a grave for Conquest and is a really good character moment. But Thetis could once again give two shits about the Viltrumites and says that they can't leave any chance for them to rebuild. Nolan then ends the conversation by reminding Thetis that Mark and Oliver are also half Viltrumite, to which Thetis doesn't respond at all and just looks out into the coldness of space. And I think Thetis is probably thinking, oh, trust me, I am well aware. Now, this is a subtle implication that Thetis may not be satisfied with just killing Thragg, and that he could potentially turn his attention towards Nolan and the Invincible boys as well in order to fully wipe out any trace of DNA left in the universe. I think that's folly though, and Mark, Oliver, Nolan and Thetis, they're all living proof that they can be good if they're guided by the right thing. It's not that Viltrumites are inherently evil, they've just been raised to be that way. This is something that's never really brought up in the comic, but I love how they add this little tension between Thetis and Nolan. It shows that while they both betray the Viltrumite Empire, they still have different ideas on how they should move forward. We also have to remember that Thetis has never spent time on Earth, which we know is kind of like the secret code to breaking the Viltrumite dogma. This is why I think we see such a contrast in how Nolan and Thetis view what should be done with the Viltrumites. Nolan has an added humanity that Thetis doesn't, which is why his only solution to stopping the Viltrumites is also carrying out mass murder. They really made Thetis a lot colder and more ruthless in the show than he is in the comic, but I think it works to emphasize just how far this guy's willing to go to finish his rebellion. All of the team bonding stuff we see here as well is new for the show, whereas in the comics we just get a little quick transition page of them on the ship. There, Mark also gets a new suit from the Coalition and tells Nolan he's scared. Oh, poor little comic Mark wants his daddy. As they reach planet Viltrum, the team then suits up. If you want to suit up in some Invincible stuff as well, then why not check out our merch store right below the video. There we have a whole host of shirts inspired by the show, and the more you buy, the more money you save. We then see Talia give tech jackets and poison darts that will weaken the Viltrumites. This calls back to the toxic stink bugs that Nolan and Alan collected in episode 2. We then saw the Coalition working on extracting the poison, however Talia stresses that she only has 10 of them and needs to make the shots count. This is actually a reference to the comics where Tech Jacket mentions having poison darts in a brief panel during the big fight. But he calls them toxin-laced projectiles, and we don't get the added stuff about them being made from stink bugs. He also doesn't mention being limited on them, but it's just a little cool addition for the show that gives us some tension during the fight, especially after we see what they do in a moment. We also get a sweet moment between Nolan and his boys as he tells them that no matter how strong they think they are, Thragg is stronger. This emphasizes that they need to stick together. Nolan then tries to tell them that he loves them, but struggles for the words, and Oliver just hugs him, with Mark joining in. Oh, big group hug, yay, we love each other again. In all seriousness though, I really love this moment, especially after seeing Nolan deservedly eat shit for the past 4 episodes. I mentioned before how Nolan's whole redemption is very much glossed over in the comics, with Mark and Oliver pretty much just immediately putting the past aside. Here though, after seeing how hard Nolan's been working to redeem himself, the moment just feels earned, and it's something both of them have desperately needed. This also made me think, I don't think we've ever actually seen Nolan say that he loves Mark, and now having seen how truly terrible the Viltrumite upbringing is, it just adds so much to how much the character's grown. Just the mere fact that he even tries to say it here is another example of how much Nolan has grown into his humanity. I mean, the last time Mark said he loved him, dude literally flew off to another planet, so yeah, a major improvement from that at least. We then get a rundown of their plan from Talia, in which they're to infiltrate Viltrum undetected and then find Thragg, call in reinforcements and kill him before the other Viltrumites even know what hit them. We then get another superhero action shot of all the heroes, and Talia says,
"Go save the galaxy already."
It's cheesy, yeah, but just an awesome feel-good moment of all our heroes together, which, yeah, I love. With all the awful things that happen in Invincible, it is easy to forget that this is a show about superheroes, and these scenes just help remind us that these people are trying to save the universe, and they're not just going out to beat the crap out of people. We then see our crew making their way to the planet, and they use the dead Viltrumites for cover. Nolan also gives Oliver a little history lesson, and he mentions it being a reminder of their weakness and failure. Like, imagine that constantly hanging over you as well, and reminding you of the fate that awaits if you show weakness. This constant sight of dead bodies would make you ruthless and cold, and it's another thing that explains absolutely everything. In the comics, Thetis gives this brief history lesson to Mark, but he calls it a monument to their sacrifice rather than a reminder of their weakness. This is a very subtle change, but it's one that emphasizes the Viltrumites being completely driven by proving their strength over others, as opposed to it just being a tribute to those that were lost. Also, I like how they gave this speech to Nolan instead of Thetis to again show how he holds some respect for the Viltrumites that have died, whether it be from the Scourge virus or by the misguided leadership of Argyle and Thragg. And yeah, it just adds a nice contrast because Thetis just wants to use them as cover in order to completely wipe out the Viltrumites without mercy. Which is pretty cool considering he's also responsible for this ring of dead bodies. However, as they make their way through the death ring, we see Thula and the others hiding among the dead. They're using the same strategy that they're trying to use to conceal themselves, and the heroes are then met by Thragg. The image of Thula hiding is right from the comics as well, and it's such a good Easter egg. But it is a big trap. Yes, it's a trap! The others then pop up and Thula slices Thetis in the back with her knife blade, which is a nice little bit of poetic justice there as well. The great betrayer, the great backstabber, gets stabbed in the back. Despite their plan now being completely screwed though, Thetis says it's still fucking on and everyone starts fighting. Also, I love Battle Beast screaming. Yes! Like the guy is fucking over the moon, the plans went to shit. This happens similarly in the comics, but it's actually Battle Beast who kicks off the fighting when he smashes Thula's face with his mace. He says that there's too much talking and not enough fighting. He actually says thinking as well, because telepathically they're in space, no need to go that deep on it, I'm sorry. With Battle Beast and Thetis taking care of Thula, Nolan then tries to take his shot at Thragg, but he's sideswiped by Nissa. Thragg continues to float there like a statue and just watches the chaos unfold, sort of like how he was removed during the purge. Alan and Tech Jacket then try to take their shot, with Tech shooting one of her poison darts. However, another Viltrumite flies in front of Thragg and it hits him instead. After he's hit with a dart, we then see why the Viltrumites wanted to get rid of those stink bugs, as it weakens him enough for Alan to uppercut him right through the fucking head. Fucking brutal, and another scene taken straight from the comics. Although in the issue, the Viltrumite soldier doesn't get hit with one of the darts, Alan can just do that, which he assumes is because some Viltrumites aren't as strong as others. So yeah, it's just a cool little addition here to not only show us what this poison does, but also explain why Alan isn't just doing that to every single Viltrumite. It also gives Alan and Tech Jacket a bit more of a teamwork dynamic, with her having to hit the Viltrumites in order for Alan to be able to kill them for good. What do I mean kill them for? Kill them for good. Just kill them in general. We then watch as everyone continues beating the shit out of each other. Mark and Oliver also have a rematch with Lucan, and Nolan battles it out with Anissa. She's kind of throwing Nolan around until he clocks her right in the jaw when she says he's become weak, and he goes, "Don't count on it!" Bam! But yeah, this continues for a bit as we just pan around seeing this big space brawl unfold until a purple beam blasts through a Viltrumite that's fighting Invincible. It also zooms like a centimeter in front of Thragg's face, who doesn't even blink despite nearly getting his ship blown off. But yeah, who is behind that purple beam? Well, it is of course Space Racer. He's come to join the fight with a group of Ragnar tied to his speeder bike. What an amazing entrance. Space Race has just as epic an introduction in the comics, but it happens immediately after Thragg and the Viltrumites come to face Thetis and the others. We don't get this 10 minutes of ass whooping first, but I'm not complaining. It's a great creative choice doing that. As Space Racer releases the Ragnar, the space dinos then start tearing through the Viltrumites. This turns the tide of the battle and gives Nolan another chance to take a shot at Thragg. However, as Nolan closes in to punch his stupid mustache right off his face, Thragg just floats back ever so slightly and causes Nolan to completely whiff. Just embarrassing, but a badass moment that shows how much more overpowered Thragg is compared to everyone else. Thragg then further proves why Mark said Nolan's so afraid of him, as he swoops around and punches Nolan in the gut so hard it creates a shockwave that beams him down to planet Viltrum. Whew! All we've heard about Thragg is how strong he is, but I didn't know he was packing heat like that. This is a big change from the comics as well, where Thragg is actually on the back foot when Space Racer shows up. He tells the Viltrumites they're too strong and to just avoid them, and we don't get this face-off between him and Nolan, which I remember being as well and being kind of underwhelmed by Thragg at first. As Nolan dusts himself off, Thragg then meets him in front of Lord Ogle's statue. He says it's been too long and that he wants to just catch up like old friends, just super casual, like, hey man, it's been a while. What I love is how the statue of Ogle also looms directly behind Thragg. This again symbolizes how Thragg's clinging to an empire that no longer exists, as well as the guilt that haunts him over Ogle's death. This is also the same place we saw Nolan at in his flashbacks in episode 2, where he was tested by his parents to prove himself worthy. It's where Thragg will now put Nolan's path to redemption against the empire to the ultimate test. Thragg tries to convince Nolan that he can come home and that everything he's done will be forgiven. However, Nolan isn't buying it and says that Viltrum is no longer a home, but instead a tomb, which really pisses Thragg off as he drops the calm intimidation act and yells,
Viltrum is not a tomb.
It's not a tomb. However, if we look at it, it is, as there's a line of bodies lining the planet, a statue to Ogle to remind them of their dead leader, and yeah, it clearly gets to him. He then starts to rush forward for a second before restraining himself from ripping Nolan's head off. As we said, Thragg blames himself for Argyll's death and pretty much everything that's happened, and this is why the little comment by Nolan hurts him so bad. Thragg then continues trying to swindle Nolan, saying that they can rebuild Viltrum and that they're his true family, who know him better than he knows himself. Despite Thragg's sweet talk, Nolan holds strong though, saying that they're no longer his family, especially after they came after Mark and Oliver. However, Thragg then brings up a pretty legitimate point in that they tested Mark and Oliver the same way they were all tested, and asks if he thinks Thetis will treat them any better. And yet, after that comment before, we know Thetis doesn't give a damn about those kids and is probably already planning to kill them. Knowing that Thragg is right, they continue their talk in Argyll's throne room when Nolan tries to convince Thragg to turn himself over. He needs to accept that the Viltrumite empire he seeks to repair died with Argyll. However, Thragg, of course, isn't trying to hear any of that bullshit.
The death of any Viltrumite leaves a void in me.
And then he just punches Nolan straight into the fucking stratosphere. Literally sucks in the air around them as he locks in his punch and sends a shockwave through the planet. Nolan also just hurtles up through the atmosphere and then out into space. Like he even passes Invincible in the rest of the entire battle. Holy shit, that was definitely not in the comics. It's an absolutely insane anime style power punch, and yeah, such a good moment. Again, this whole sequence with Thragg and Nolan is new for the show, but it's the perfect way to put Nolan's redemption to the test. The fact they give him the chance to go back to the Empire, it proves he's truly broken through his Viltrumite programming. And through the fucking sound barrier as well. Jesus Christ, fucking hell, did they make Thragg so much more powerful in the show? I mean, he's still that dude in the comics, but yeah, we don't see him doing shit like this. With Nolan flying off into space, Thragg then rejoins the battle and Oliver sees an opportunity to take him out, which is something Mark and Nolan told him specifically not to do. Given the last 2 times he'd done it with Conquest resulted in him getting his face smashed in, well, the 3rd time's the charm. Oh, yeah, not good. There goes his jaw again. Oh, and his arm as well. Oh, god damn. Also, I love how Thragg disses Oliver first, saying he's not one of them before ripping him apart. We also get Oliver's line of,
"Hey, dickhead! A black hole call. He wants it sucked back!"
It's a fucking banger and is a line that comes straight from the comics along with a shot of Thragg ripping him to shreds. However, Oliver has another great one-liner during this moment in the comic where Krieg calls him inferior and Oliver says his balls are inferior. With Nolan off in the wind and Oliver basically dead, Mark then tries to come to his rescue, but he's quickly stopped by Thragg. However, Mark is ready to go, saying he killed Conquest and will kill Thragg too, which we kind of see gets the attention of the other Viltrumites, and they're like, oh shit, this kid killed Conquest. Respect, man. They don't actually say, but it's basically what they say in the comics during the scene as Mark starts attacking Thragg. Also, love Thragg's response to Invincible's threat as he just says,
Show me.
Which I can't help but feel was a callback to The Matrix.
I know Kung Fu. Show me.
Thragg was great in the comics, but he's so much cooler in the show, and Lee Pace is the man and basically as intimidating here as he is as the Emperor in Foundation, which you should also watch. Ready to avenge his brother, Mark then powers up and goes at Thragg full force, giving him another anime-inspired superpower punch right in the dome. We see as the shot flashes black and white as Invincible makes impact. It even flashes into a red skull with glowing eyes. Now, because of that, I read this as being the hardest that Mark has ever hit anyone. However, Thragg just eats it and doesn't move an inch.
I'm not impressed.
Not impressed.
I mean, Conquest beat the crap out of Mark, but he was still at least able to punch him. This guy is just a brick wall. While this flash in dialogue is new for the show, I think the super punch was probably inspired by this panel of Invincible punching Thragg in the forehead, which happens later in the fight. Leaving Mark to face certain death, we catch back up with Nolan, who's still tumbling through space. That is until the Viltrumite death ring breaks his momentum and he regains control of himself. Looking back at the battle really far away, he sees Oliver and his severed arm floating around and flies back in to save him. Meanwhile, Mark's still wailing away at Thragg, who's just taking his punches and he just tosses him away. Also, hilarious moment here where as he's going after Mark to continue his beating, Battle Beast tries to intervene. And Thragg just goes nope and punches his lights out before tossing him away into Mark, which happens similarly in the comics but is way funnier here. As Mark regains consciousness, Nolan finally catches up and calls everyone to form on him as he makes a beeline for planet Viltrum. He tells Mark to forget about Thragg and for Space Racer to take the lead as he fires his infinity rain to the planet. Nolan, Mark and Thetis then follow the blast to the planet's surface and fly themselves through Viltrum's core until they come out the other side. In an epic blaze of glory, we see the city crumble as Thetis, Nolan and Mark struggle to stay together as they blast through layer and layer of rock until nearly burning to death in the planet's core. Also love the cut shot we get as the screen goes black and we have the beam from the Infinity Ray. This grows into a fireball as it plunges into the planet with the three heroes following behind it. Absolutely incredible. This plays out pretty much the same in the comic as well, but it's shown in a big splash page from a bird's eye view, and that it doesn't really let you get up close and personal. I just love how we get to follow them all the way as they fight to make their way through the other side. This is one of my favourite moments from the comics, but they absolutely knocked this out of the park and just took it to the next level. I also love the symbolism here of 3 generations of Viltrumites coming together to destroy the remnants of the old empire and make way for a new future. Thetis began the rebellion, Nolan then rebelled, and Mark represents the future of the Viltrumites. This is also perfectly represented by the crumbling of Ogle's statue and his skull being destroyed in his throne room. It brings a true end to his rule over the Viltrumites, which is honestly something I never picked up on in my hundreds of times reading the comics. I think it's a true testament to show how well the show has been able to expand on so many of its themes from the comics and its characters to make these moments even more impactful and give us new insight into a story many of us already know. With Planet Viltrum now space dust, everyone looks at the destruction in shock and horror. If you watched our earlier videos as well, and you might have seen that we discussed the title could be showing the destruction of the Viltrumite Empire as the colour of their uniforms and crumbled into space, which I felt was going to be this moment. But yeah, very Star Wars, Death Star planety, and everyone is stunned, including Mark and Nolan. But Thetis is like, a good job boys, had to be done. You do worry about the escalation though, and if this is something that Thragg could do to Earth. Mark then remembers that Oliver's still floating around somewhere, but doesn't get the chance to look for him as Thragg comes back for his revenge. Poor Oliver, man, he's just been floating around without an arm and half his face basically this whole time, and he missed the super cool explosion. Breaking through the rubble and crying, Thragg then says he chooses death and rips Thetis' head clean off. He says Emperor Ogle has finally been avenged as he crushes Thetis' head and promises they'll all be next. It's the culmination of Thragg's choice to be merciful, and it's led to everything Ogle stood for being destroyed. Either way, this scene's nearly a shot-for-shot recreation of the comics, and it brings us to the end of issue 75. The only slight difference is that Thetis gives Thragg a chance to surrender instead of just getting immediately murdered. Rest in peace, Thetis, though. I'll never forget that time you took your beard off, that one time. Making good on his promise immediately, Thragg then attacks Nolan and flies him into space, and Mark tells Alan to find Oliver so he can go after them. Feels a lot like Man of Steel when Superman was laying into Zod. As Thragg beats the crap out of Nolan, Mark's able to catch up and save his old man, but only for a brief moment. Thragg easily takes him out of the fight and resumes his beatdown on Nolan. He says that he made a mistake killing Thetis so quickly and that he will make Nolan suffer. We also get a quick scene of Alan putting the beatdown on some Viltrumites before he and Space Racer and Tech Jacket decide it's time to dip. There's nothing they can really do, and they still can't find Oliver. Damn, dude, where the hell is this kid? We also get an awesome moment of Space Racer shooting through a Viltrumite as they escape, which does happen in the comic, but I never get tired of seeing him use that gun. Back with Mark and Nolan, Thragg then continues to embarrass them, and Mark straight up starts to run away. But of course, Thragg is way faster, and he easily catches them. He's saved right by Nolan before getting a Viltrumite gut punch. However, Thragg just returns the favour and gives it to Nolan instead. As Mark watches his dad get his guts ripped out, he then tries attacking Thragg again, but this has zero effect on him, and Thragg just grabs him and starts squeezing his head like a grape. As Thragg's fingers start to break through Mark's eye sockets, he loses consciousness, and Thragg looks up to see all the destruction left behind from Planet Viltrum. He not only sees the dead that once surrounded the planet, but also all the soldiers they lost during the whole battle, including Nolan. As Krieg and the few Viltrumites left standing gather around and tell Thragg to kill Invincible, he tells them to shut the hell up and lets Mark go. As he explains, they have too few already, which we can see that there's also now only 6 of them left, which, yeah, considering they start off with 40 or 50, I think it was, not good. So yeah, they kind of need everyone they can get at this point. Tim once more showing mercy though, and it is possible that he'll pay for this down the line. And yes, obviously I've read the comics several times, I know what happens. But yeah, this pisses Krieg off, but he stands down and just asks what Thragg's next orders are. This whole fight between Thragg, Mark and Nolan also plays out pretty much the same in the comics, with just some slight differences, such as Thragg talking a bit more about how screwed all of his plans are. Another difference is that Krieg actually does speak up against Thragg and even tries to attack him. But yeah, given how insanely powerful they made Thragg here in the show, I don't blame him for not having the balls to do it here. As the Viltrumites leave Mark and Nolan somewhat alive, we then watch as their unconscious bodies float through space for an almost uncomfortable amount of time. Hey, maybe they'll finally bump into Oliver. Luckily, they're eventually found by Talia and the others. I think we're all in the same boat right now though, because Alan's reaction is the perfect description of my face for pretty much this whole episode. We then cut to Mark waking up weeks later where he learns that both Nolan and Oliver are alive, and we see Oliver recovering in a Bacta tank. This is obviously, another nod to Star Wars and a cool little Easter egg, as he's also lost his arm, with Luke losing a hand later in that movie. It also turns out Alan's the new leader of the coalition of planets, and Sados got his head smashed like the like button. And we've got one in. It's a happy ending for everyone in a way, except for one small problem. Thragg and the 6 other Viltrumites are still off in the wild, and they have no idea where they went. Whoops. We then see Alan call everyone together to figure out what the hell's going on, as Talia says the Viltrumites basically just vanished. Now, being a worrisome guy, Mark basically figures everything out and comes to the grim realization that the Viltrumites have gone to Earth. Boom! And that's how you do a damn episode. We don't even get a fun little end credit sequence this week, which I'm not even that upset about. Honestly, don't know if I could have handled any more. I mean, we say this damn near every week at this point, but how can this not be the new best episode of the series? Like Invincible and Omni-Man flew themselves into the core of a planet. This episode truly had everything. It had insane brutal action, high stakes, secret history, good changes from the comics, a lying fighting in space, and lots of character growth. What more could you possibly want? Genuinely shocking how they were able to fit all this into just an hour and make it even more epic than it was on the page. Among the various changes they've made from the comics, the little backstory we get of Thragg and Thetis is by far my favourite addition, and it adds so much context to why Thragg's such a psycho and so driven when it comes to bringing the Viltrumites back. It's also just so cool to spend some time with Planet Viltrum before it got blown up, as it's something that we never got to see in the comics, beside like the short panels that depict stories told by Thragg and Nolan. And now we're just left to imagine what kind of hell the Viltrumites are unleashing on Earth for an entire week. Yes, I do know you are going to enjoy it. But yeah, saying that, I honestly thought this is where they would leave the season off, so who knows what they're going to pull out to leave us for another year until season 5. As always though, I'd love to hear your thoughts below, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that finale. If you want to follow us on Instagram as well and keep up to date with all our breakdowns, then make sure that you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos just like this, and right now we've got one for Full Metal Jacket. We do a big film analysis on it, it's really good. Hope to see you guys over there. Well, I'd say it's really good. You might think it's crap. I'm patting myself on the back a bit there. But yeah, it is good. I promise. So yeah, go pay 99 cents and you'll get to see that early. If not though, huge thank you for sticking through this video. I've been your host Paul. You've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.